So from some of the destructive actions that we spoke about yesterday, pick one or two that you really want to purify, and let's spend some time generating sincere regret for having engaged in that action in this life and in previous lives, or in previous lives, whichever. Okay, so strong regret, and then that leads you into a determination not to do it. When you're contemplating the regret or generating regret, go through the situation in your mind and see what mental attitudes were manifest in your mind at what point during the event, and what prompted those particular mental attitudes of maybe greed or rage or jealousy or whatever it is. So go through the situation and really understand how your mind came to have that specific motivation, and then engage in that action. And as you go through that, or when you have understood that well in your mind, then think about how else you could have seen the situation, especially towards the beginning, so that you the afflictions didn't become so powerful. You were able to catch them earlier by seeing the situation differently. Because I think when we can see another way that we could have interpreted or acted in the situation, that helps us see that the way we did act and the way we did interpret it is not something to solidify, because it could have been different and it could have been something else. So then there's more space in our mind, and we can actually regret our attitude in the action. So after you've generated regret, then if the negativity was towards the three jewels or your spiritual mentor, then you take refuge. If it was towards other sentient beings, then you generate bodhicitta. So you have to change your attitude towards whoever it was that was the object of that destructive action. And then for the remedial action, visualize one of the Buddha figures, or even Shakyamuni Buddha, and in front of you, and light coming from them into you. purifying and bringing realizations, and chant the mantra inside, to yourself, because we'll all be thinking about different ones probably. But really feel that all of that stickiness, gooiness, confused muck is getting purified. And then reaffirm your determination not to do the action again, or at least to be more careful when you're in those situations. But some practical determination that you feel fairly confident you can do. So we'll carry on from where we were yesterday. So we left off with, I've engaged in the 5 heinous actions and the 5 parallel heinous actions. So I have transgressed the precepts of individual liberation. So those are the pratimoksha precepts. And there's 8 different kinds of pratimoksha precepts. Okay, so everybody should know this. You should be able to rattle it off, okay? So, what are they? What? What are the lower ones? Yeah, the 5 precepts for men and women. So that's upasaka and upasika. Okay. Yeah, or shrama. Yeah. Then after that, what's the next one up from that? Yeah, shramanera, shramaneri. So those are people who have 10 precepts. Okay. Now, for some reason that I have still not been able to figure out or get a good answer on, that the Tibetans divide the 10 precepts into 36. So they say they have 36 precepts. In the ceremony itself, it's 10. And in all the other Buddhist pratimoksha lineages, it's 10 shramanera precepts. Yeah. So I've asked various teachers why, and I've gotten, well, it's listed in this book, it's listed in that book, but that doesn't tell me where they came from and why that's the only tradition that has it. But anyway, they come to the same point, because the other ones are, you take the 10 and then expand upon them, okay? And that actually, when you do that, then you see, okay, the first one, do not kill. Yeah. Then there's not killing a human being, there's not killing an animal, there's, so many different kinds of killing. Yeah. And so it spreads out into that. The one about not stealing in the 36, you have not, when you're on Pindapat, not covering your rice with curry and not covering your curry with rice. So that one could be considered stealing or it could be considered lying, but it's branches of those. Because you're going from house to house and you want more of one thing, so you cover what you have already, so the person thinks you don't have any and will give you more. Okay? So you're being deceptive, but then you're also accepting something that isn't completely freely offered because you're manipulated to get it. Okay? So it's quite interesting to look at the precepts that way and see, starting even just with the 5, and how they branch out and which ones they, are branches of which. Okay, like singing, dancing, playing music, where does that go with the 5? With intoxicants, yeah. Because it's just as intoxicants are distracting your mind, singing, dancing, music, yeah, takes your mind away, yeah. Okay. What about wearing jewelry, cosmetics, things like that? Where does that fit in? Yeah, it could be with the sexual one, trying to make yourself attractive, so somebody will be attracted to you. It also could fit in with the intoxicants, because it's again wanting to get yourself into an intoxicating situation. Yeah. Okay. So it's interesting to look at them this way. Okay. Then the level above that is Shikshamana. Okay. So they have 6 principal precepts and 292, kind of auxiliary, we could call them. It's interesting because in the different Vinaya traditions, the enumeration of the Shikshamana precepts sometimes varies. Yeah. So, there's debate about that, just as there is about the 8 heavy actions for nuns, because the lists are not all exactly the same. Yeah, and most of them have the same as the Dharmaguptaka that you know. But what is it? Mahasangika has 12 and Mula Sravastivada has 18. Yeah. So it would be so nice to be able to trace the evolution of these things. There's some idea that maybe they were added later and that's why they're different in different Vinayas. Yeah. And then after that, what's the full ordination? Bhikshu and Bhikshuni. Okay. Yeah. So there, the precepts are quite similar. The Bhikshu precepts in the different Vinayas are similar. The Bhikshuni precepts similar. Yeah. There are some differences. But there's basically a lot of similarity. And when you consider that this was passed down orally for centuries, Yeah, that there was no master copy in a library that you could take your list and compare it to, then it's really quite amazing that the precepts are as similar as they are. And here too, those of you who have looked at choosing simplicity, the way Venerable Wu-Yin teaches it is instead of looking at the categories of precepts, there are 8 parajikas, there are 17 Sanghavasesas, there are 30 Niyasangika Payantikas, then there's regular Payantikas, so you can classify them according to those sections. But what she's done, and I think it's very skillful, is to take the, starting with the root ones, and again, in some way going back to the 5 precepts, looking at the basic things and then categorizing all the other ones under that. Yeah, different kinds of bad behavior. So, it may not be, when you get to the lapses, maybe you have singing, dancing, playing music, but when you get into, even like the remainders, the Sanghavasesas, yeah, there's a few that pertain to lying. When you accuse somebody of committing a defeat, and you're lying about what they did, or you're accusing them and you're using irrelevant information. Yeah, so you're inventing conspiracy theories and lying about. It's just amazing how this also maps onto American life. But you can see that and how it fits in. And so she often teaches it in that way, which I think is very, very helpful, because also then we get more of a reason about the, the precepts that come at the end of the bhikshu or bhikshuni pratimoksha. You get more of an idea of where they go, and then you could see, there's this reason, there's this minor precept, and if you can keep that minor precept well, it helps you not create not transgress the precept of the next higher category, that is in that same genre of working with the same kind of emotion. Are you getting what I'm saying? Yeah. So, then you can really begin to see, that's why there's all these etiquette. There's 100 training rules that a lot have to do with etiquette. Yeah. So, but when you really look at them more closely, okay, I can understand that if I abandon that simple action, it puts me on the way to not abandoning one that is more serious, which puts me on the way to not, committing a defeat, a parajika. Yeah. So it's a very interesting way of learning the precepts. In choosing simplicity, she didn't go through all of the bhikshuni precepts in that way, but I think it would be really nice when we get to that point in our Vinaya class to us categorize all the precepts under, the main ones that they're trying to help us avoid. Yeah, and then, so it's taking the lesser ones, putting them with the main ones, and then taking the main ones and unpacking them, and then you get the lesser ones. Yeah. And so that's why, at our shemdap, our lower robe, you have the border at the bottom and at the top. So that's symbolizing the the quote, lesser precepts that act as a fence or a border so that you don't break the main precepts, which is the main central part of your Shamdap. Okay. And then, what's the 8th one? The 8 one-day vows. Okay. So the 8 one-day vows and the 8 Mahayana precepts are not exactly alike. Okay. They're very similar. They're both 8. Many of the precepts are the same. But what's the big difference between them? Your motivation. Okay. So the motivation for the 8 Mahayana precepts is bodhicitta. Yeah. And then when we talk about the pratimoksha 8 precepts, the minimum motivation there is renunciation, the wish to attain arhatship. Okay. There's some small differences in how those 8 are kept. It's quite interesting in Thailand. Yeah, the monks, I don't think they smoke, but they chew tobacco. Yeah, they may smoke too. Has anybody seen them? Not all of them do, but it's permitted in their Vinaya. In ours, no, and the reason is that it's said that tobacco smells so bad it attracts, negative spirits. And tobacco does stink, doesn't it? And it attracts the whole vibe of a bar. Yeah, which is not, an environment that makes you think of virtue, is it? Yeah. Okay. So we've transgressed the precepts of individual liberation. Yeah, it's called individual liberation because they are geared towards arhatship, the liberation of an individual, which is different than the enlightenment of somebody who's going to work for the benefit of all sentient beings. Okay? So, I've transgressed those. Oh, yeah. Okay. It's interesting when we come together for posada. We always transgress. Well, I wore lay clothes, or I dig in the garden, or I ate after lunch, or, I sang this song for somebody's birthday. Yeah. But, there's some other precepts in there, like I slandered another monastic. I've never heard anybody confess that. Yeah, because we're all little angels. We don't slander anybody. Yeah. There's another one about kicking other people out of your room, or you kick them out of their room. What happens on moving days? Yeah, I don't move with that room with that person. They can move out. Or I'm going to move out. Yeah, I don't like that room. I don't want a room with that person. I haven't heard anyone confess that either. I guess people don't do that. Yeah, it's total harmony on moving day, huh? So it's interesting. Sometimes we need to look a little bit more deeply at what they are. Are we going around humming? Yeah, are we going around, we sing one of the chants for somebody's birthday, and then you sit down to meditate, and it's, hey, Jew, or whatever else you're doing, and then you know why it's something. There's a precept about it because it definitely interferes with your meditation. Yeah. Yeah, you're putting on chapstick. When often in India, I stay at the house of the incarnation of my teacher. And I was putting on chapstick one day, and he went, "Oh, you're wearing lipstick." I said, "No, it's not lipstick. There's no color in it. It's for chapped lips." Yeah. But, we could probably snitch a little bit, add something to it, I don't know. We are so creative on how to do different things with a very good reason for doing it. Yeah. If you go visit your home and your toenails are not painted, then, what are your parents going to say? In some homes, that's a big deal. Yeah? Yeah. Thank goodness it wasn't in my home. But, in some homes, it is. And so, just to look and see. Okay. Oh, and then, another difference with the Theravada tradition. Well, this is an interesting one, because when, the first way that Theravada came to the West is you had Sharon Salzberg and Jack Kornfield and Joseph Goldstein, so those people. So they were at the Theravada monasteries. They came back to the West. They did not teach Theravada Buddhism because they thought the Buddhist part would be, nobody in the West would like it, because it talks about afflictions, it talks about rebirth, it talks about nirvana, so they taught that version of Vipassana meditation, which Westerners really liked, because you didn't need to be Buddhist. You could, be whatever religion you want, and do their kind of Vipassana. Okay, so Vipassana, actually, it means insight, and it's a meditation that's found in all of the Buddhist traditions. So they've taken the name of a style of meditation and given it to their tradition in the West. It's called the Vipassana tradition, okay? But there's many different versions of Vipassana. So how it's practiced in Theravada Buddhism and Zen and Theravada, and Tibetan, it's different. And even within, let's say, Theravada Buddhism, there's many different kinds of Vipassana. It depends which monastery you go to and which Achang they're following and how he teaches. Okay, so there's many different kinds. But, okay, that was a sidetrack. Coming back, regarding the precepts, then you have the people from Achan Sumedho, his tradition, who ordained, and they brought the monastic tradition, the Theravada monastic tradition, back to the West, specifically the Thai Theravada, specifically the forest tradition. Okay, so in Thailand itself, there's different branches of Theravada. And then Myanmar has Theravada, very different branches, and Sri Lanka, and so there's some differences in their Tripitakas and, how they hold the precepts. The Thai forest is like very strict, This is the one pure way to do it. They don't say that, but that's kind of the vibe you get, or at least the vibe I get. And then the Tibetans are like sloppy, we can't even line our shoes up in a straight line, and our robes are crooked, and we sing and dance and play music and eat in the wrong times, and, it's like, and anyway, we're following apocryphal sutras, because only the Pali Sutras are the real words of the Buddha. Everybody else, all the Mahayana, is fake, they say. I don't believe that. It's quite interesting. What is there in the Mahayana that people don't like, that they want to complain about? I did come across something when I was at the monastery in Thailand. There was one or two monks who came to me and said, full Buddhahood is impractical, and it's too hard. If I get myself out of samsara, that's good enough. That's a service to the world. There's one less obnoxious sentient being. Yeah. But they really think, it's just too high and it's impractical. Yeah. Of course, we don't think like that. We think it's like, what are you going to complain? What can you complain about with bodhicitta? I don't get it. What, you don't like great compassion? And there's different views of emptiness. But back to the precepts. I'm still trying to get to one point. How the Theravada monastics, the Western Theravada monastics, okay, when they came back and they were setting up Chithurst, I think was their first monastery, and then Amaravati and so on, they were working very hard, because at Chithurst they had old buildings, and so they had to put in a lot of manual labor to get them up to standard where they could live in them and so on. And yet they have this precept not to eat after lunch. And not after lunch, after noon, okay? And they're quite meticulous by that. When that clock says 12, or when, better yet, you have a sundial, when that hits noon, you should be totally done. Okay, not starting, but totally done. Anyway, because they were doing the manual work, they needed some kind of substance to, have. So in our tradition, what are you allowed to have in the afternoon? Liquids. Okay, you can't have juice with pulp. You can't have something that's thicker than what can go through a strainer. Although, do you remember in one skit, Venerable Losang took out one of the noodle strainers with very big holes. Oh yeah, you put the muffin in the blender, and then it goes through those holes. But in the Sanskrit Pali, it says ghee. Okay, ghee is like solidified oil. It's not quite as thick as butter, but it's not liquid, but it can easily be liquid. Anyway, they said, well, we don't have ghee in the West, so cheese is close enough. So we can eat cheese in the afternoon. And so they eat cheese in the afternoon. Yeah. But what's interesting is you cannot have a whole glass of milk. That's thick. Okay? The ghee is supposed to be thin, and then the cheese substitutes for the ghee. Okay. You can have, candied ginger? Ginger, because that's medicine. And coffee beans, that's medicine too. And Uh-oh, she's going to run away to a Theravada monastery.
I just get a prescription for coffee.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, what's the coffee? I guess, it's an antidote to falling asleep. I don't know, but it's considered a medicine. The ginger, candied ginger. Chocolate is, not milk chocolate, because it has milk in it. So the milk and milk chocolate is verboten, but the milk and the cheese is okay. But you can have dark chocolate. Okay, that's a medicine too. Okay, so what I'm getting at is different people have different ways of interpreting their precepts. And, the Pali, the Theravada usually say, we're the ones who are following everything exactly the way it was at the time of the Buddha. But there are adjustments that have been made. Okay, for example, one of our bhikshu, bhikshuni precepts is not to ride in a vehicle. Okay, so that means, how did our two Achan friends get here? How do we go out and teach or go to teachings? Yeah, so at the time of the Buddha, okay, a vehicle, most vehicles, well, they didn't have engines at that time, so the vehicles were rickshaws that were pulled by human beings, or carts that were pulled by animals. Yeah? So it involved, harm to other living beings. If today they even have human motored rickshaws. That's really hard. I don't think we should ride those at all, because they want us to, because that's how they make money, but it's so cruel. And then also, so because of the effect on other sentient beings, but also at the time of the Buddha, it was usually only kings and queens and, high status people that rode in those kind of vehicles. And so they were sitting higher with their nose in the air, looking down on all the paupers. And so the Buddha certainly doesn't want his monastics having that kind of attitude. Yeah. So, there have been things that have been adapted for the contemporary situation, and every tradition has done that. There's been a lot of debate about, shall we just change the precepts so that they fit our modern situation, or do we just make exceptions, or do we adapt, write our own monastery rules, how we keep the precepts in a particular monastery or particular tradition. So there's been a lot of debate. And the Asian masters say, don't change it. Don't change the precepts. These were set down by the Buddha. It's not up to us to change. Except, interestingly, Thich Nhat Hanh. He wrote a whole different set of precepts for his contemporary disciples. What's interesting in it is, in the traditional, because they followed the Dharmaguptaka, the nuns have more precepts than the monks do. So this was an opportunity in my eyes, if you're going to adapt it to modern circumstances, make the precepts the same, or if there's things that have to be gender specific, make the same number of precepts in each category. No. They made, again, in the revised one, the nuns have more precepts than with the monks. they also say, and this is our tradition also, that the more precepts you have, the more merit you create, and the higher you should be regarded for keeping those precepts. So, if you keep tantric precepts, it's better, you have those plus the bodhisattva. And if you have bodhisattva precepts, you have those plus the pratimoksha. But somehow that thing of respecting people according to the number of precepts they have, it didn't quite work out, regarding the bhikshu and bhikshuni precepts. So, there's just, okay, so most of the Asians, except for Thich Nhat Hanh, say don't change the precepts. Then I've met some Westerners who would like to change them, and I think those are probably mostly Thich Nhat Hanh's disciples, because he did that, and so his disciples followed that. What they did in China, Baisheng, yeah. So he, in the 8th century, sometime around then, so he adapted some of the precepts so that it fit Chinese culture, yeah. And then these were called local precepts, yeah. So because the Buddha himself, yeah, he made standard precepts, but there were exceptions in the precepts according to the climate and the locale and the culture of the place. Okay, so if you live in, I forget what it is. There's one material. If you live in a warm climate, you cannot use this material to make your robes. But if you live in a cold climate, it's not a transgression. You're permitted to use it. So there's many kind of things like that. Yeah, and I think that's a very skillful way of doing it. You try and keep the meaning of the precept, the affliction that a precept is trying to help us to tame and subdue, but we adapt it to our present situation so that the precept really works for us. Yeah. So, for example, well, you see how we interpret our precepts here. We have a way of doing it at Sravasti Abbey. There's some things we keep very strictly. Of course, the Parajikas and the Sanghavasesas. But then there's other things, like every time you get something to drink in the afternoon, there's a certain way of declaring it. And there's lots of things, small things to do. And we don't do those, basically because it takes quite a bit of time to, every time you have something to drink, to go and bow to somebody and declare that this is okay. And the same thing with medicine. You're allowed to keep medicine for 7 days, but you can't have that same medicine after 7 days. Probably because it would get stale. In India, the bugs would eat it. It would get melted or, deformed. And we kind of changed it to we don't drink cow's urine for medicine. That's the standard prescription in the Vinaya for medicine, yeah. So, anybody tried cow's urine? Yeah.
Hard to get.
What? You just walk down the road. There's some cows there. Yeah. You just have to have a thing and hold it at the right time in the right place, and hope he doesn't kick you. Okay, so I feel that's a good way, that we have our own Sravasti Abbey way of doing things. So we have a standard that everybody abides by, yeah. And within that standard, some people like gardening, okay, digging in the earth. It's, according to the Vinaya, you're not supposed to do that because it endangers the lives of all the moles and voles and worms and insects and everything around. Some people like to garden. They can garden. They should be confessing that at Posada. Yeah. There's other people like me. I won't garden. Okay. I don't dig in the earth, but I will cut live branches sometimes. In my mind, I see different reasons for that. Yeah. Because I'm not endangering if there's a live tree and I cut off a branch or something, I'm not endangering that. The tree is not a sentient being and I'm not killing anybody, but if I dug in the earth, I might be doing that. So we have things that are a standard, and there's some leeway if you want to do it, and then you should make sure and confess it. Eating in the afternoon is the same thing. Some people need to do that for their health. Yeah. So that way of still having some commonly kept standard, although it is adapted to our modern situation. And in the Vinaya, and it says this in the Posada text, if there's things that are similar to the precepts, abandon those things. If there are things that are similar to the precepts of what the prescriptive precepts, things that we should do, then we should do those things. Okay, so there's a lot of things the Buddha didn't make precepts about. But if Buddha were alive today, do you think he would make precepts about internet use? You bet he would. Internet use, social media. Do you think he would let the Sangha each have their own Facebook page? Yeah. Would he permit everybody to have their own cell phone? Would he permit everybody to have their own computer? Well, maybe, but there has to be some control of what you use your computer for. Because otherwise people can get into a lot of going down that slippery slope. Yeah. Okay, so that's why at the Abbey we have, our house rules about those kinds of things. No personal cell phones. When you come here, you give up your cell phone. Yeah, and I know for some people it's like cutting off their arm, but your arm is still there. It's just not holding a cell phone anymore, so you can do it. Also, along this line, it's just, sometimes when you look at the precepts, you can see so many ways to wiggle your way around so you can get what you want, but without technically breaking a precept. Okay, case in point. And I'm not getting down on the Theravada tradition here. I'm just kind of saying how it is, So we were going to one of our monastic conferences where we have the monastics from different traditions come together. And Jampel was a monk at that time, and he came with. And so they picked us up at the airport. So he was riding in the van with the Theravada monks. And he said the whole way from the airport to the monastery, they talked about their phones and their computers and their different digital stuff. And what did you get? And what kind of brand is it? And how many, gigahoos does it have? And let me see it. And can you do this and that? And, now, and according to the Theravada Vinaya, if that is a gift to you given by one of your lay supporters, yeah, who knows that you can't buy it yourself, yeah, but sees you. You know, no, I'm joking about that one. But, your lay supporter has given you, so you didn't buy any things. You didn't engage in business, which is another transgression. You didn't handle money, which is a transgression. Yeah. And there's no rules about cell phones and computers and tablets and, the latest digital stuff. So you're clear. Yeah. If you take everything literally. Now, if you look, what's the foremost affliction that our precepts are designed to counteract? Attachment. Do you think that the people who have all those digital devices maybe have some attachment to them? Yeah. And then, which one do you have? Oh, look at mine. I have the latest model of that one. You develop some competition, some bragging, yeah, or jealousy. Oh, they have the iPhone 496. I only have the iPhone. What is it now? 12, 11. Well, but. Yeah, 195. So they have a better iPhone than I do. Yeah, I better let my benefactor know about it, except you can't say that. Yeah. So you learn, when somebody takes you out, and it's a very hot day, and you want something to drink, it's like, oh, look, there's coconut juice. Yeah. Have you ever tasted coconut juice? What are you doing? Hinting. Yeah. In our tradition, that's considered wrong livelihood. Okay. So you get all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then just practically, for us it was hard enough here saying we're only going to accept the food that people offer and not go and buy food. Yeah. But we'll cook it ourselves. In the Theravada monasteries, they don't buy it. They don't cook it. Yeah. So the lay people have to cook it either at the monastery or at home and bring it to the monastery. And it has to be brought there usually by about 10:30 so that everybody can eat and finish before noon. So everything revolves around the meal. If you have to go somewhere, it's either before the meal, or after the meal. Your whole day is planned around the meal. Yeah. And then the lay people, in ancient times, it worked. Not everybody worked at jobs where they had no time off and would get fired if they, just left in the middle of the day. Yeah, it was an agricultural society. Here, how many people do we know who could cook food for even the number of people that are here, and cook it and bring it to us every day? I mean, we live out in the boonies, and who has the time, let's say, to drive an hour and a half from South Hill here, and then cook, and then drive an hour and a half back? I mean, everybody's working now. The women are working, yeah, and yeah. So, and then also, I'm sure the Buddha would have precepts about driving a car and when it's okay to drive a car. Yeah? Can you just get into the car whenever you want to and go wherever you want to? No. Yeah, why not? Well, it's polluting the environment. And the Buddha would definitely set up precepts for the Sangha. Yeah, the Theravadas don't even drive. Of course, there's no precept prohibiting that. Yeah, but they've chosen not to drive. But the amount of gas that is wasted and pollution that occurs with the lay people driving the food here, driving and then going home again. Yeah, you get a lot of pollution. If you have the Sangha just going out whenever they want to, that's why we have to check with, before we go out, we check and who else has errands to run, and we do those. I mean, that's our contribution to trying to not pollute the environment. Yeah, and that's a hard one. So many people talk about, the gas pollution, but it's so difficult for people not to get in the car and go to the grocery store when they get a craving for something. Or, just go, I feel like going here, I want to take a drive. On Sunday, what did your family do on Sunday? Yeah, I see a lot of us. What did our families do? They got in the car and they just drove around. My family liked looking at houses, just driving on the streets looking at houses. Boring, I mean, you guys, if you understand why, when you ask me to choose things about the Buddha Hall, why I can't do it, because this stuff for me is like so incredibly boring. How you make a building look beautiful. Can we go home now? Can we go home? Oh, let's look at this house. Isn't that a pretty color? Anyway, okay? But that's what families do. You're bored. What do people do when they're bored? You get in a car. You race down the road in the car. You race your friends down Hollywood Boulevard. Yeah?
I love looking at houses.
Yeah, I know. That's why you get to choose all the things in the Buddha Hall.
And then we went for ice cream after that.
Yeah, the ice cream part was okay. Okay, but what you had to do before to get the ice cream. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I came into this world with some strange karma. Yeah. My mother wanted a daughter who cared about her clothes and cared about her hair and all that kind of stuff. And she got me. I mean, my poor mom. She wanted a daughter to go to mother and daughter lunches with, where they had mother and daughter lunches where they had a fashion show after the lunch. Spare me, please. But that's what my mom wanted. So, yeah. So parenthood is not all bliss. Right? So, yeah. So what I'm getting at is there's different traditions do things in different ways, and everybody has a reason why they do things the way they do things. Okay? So, yeah. So some people are more flexible than others, but whenever you're traveling, then you should, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Yeah, so if you visit a Theravada monastery, you eat when they eat. I was at one of the nuns' places, and they offered me something in the evening. I didn't ask, they offered, and so that I took, okay? But otherwise, you do as they do. How you wear the robes, there's also some differences, okay? In the Chinese tradition, you are covered. You're very covered, Your robes go all the way down to your ankles. They go all the way down to your wrists, yeah? And everything is very loose and flowing. And they're usually in gray or black or brown, and then with yellow or, an orange color for special occasions, yeah? The Theravada, ochre color, in Thailand. In Sri Lanka, it is bright orange, okay? Myanmar, I think it's more kind of, the nuns wear pink. I don't know where that came from. And the monks, a kind of brownish, light brown, tan thing. Yeah. And so in the Theravada with the monks, they have one undergarment, that goes like this, and then they have their chugu and their namjar, and their namjar is huge. And if you ever are friends with the Theravada monk, they will show you how they take the ends here and roll it, and then, and you get all 9 meters of the thing over your shoulder, or 9 feet. It couldn't be 9 meters. Yeah, maybe 9 feet. Yeah. Yeah. But the nuns in Theravada, long sleeves, necklines here. The monks, they can go around half naked. Okay, that's completely okay. Nuns can't. Although I saw one Western nun do that, and it was like, anyway, yeah, no, that's not cool. You don't do that because their upper garment is, yeah. Anyway, so, but when I'm with Theravada monks, at least the Western ones, I ask them please to wear a long sleeve shirt. Yeah, I don't want to see a half naked monk. Yeah, kind of, yeah, outgrown that. Yeah, so, yeah, but when I go there, then I wear long sleeves. And when I'm in the Chinese tradition, usually I wear long sleeves. When we were doing all the things at the ordination before, we, even if I was wearing Tibetan robes, I had my jacket on, yeah. Because it's just more according to their culture. It feels better, yeah. But I thought it was kind of nice asking the monks to put on more clothes. Yeah, I mean, they should. They should be more sensitive, I think. I didn't do it to go, bleh. Believe me, I didn't do it for that reason, but yeah. So, there's different ways and different reasons in all the different traditions. So we kind of have our own way of doing things, and we follow, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Okay? So our tradition, comes from the Chinese, the Dharmaguptaka, which is big in China and Vietnam. But we wear Tibetan robes. And when we're here, we don't have sleeves, usually. So, things can vary according to that. Okay. Oh, so I did one phrase. I got way off on talking about Pratimoksha precepts. So maybe people have some questions. Yeah. These topics, what I spoke about, they would come up in the course later, but now they came today.
Venerable, would you also talk about the dress etiquette when we're in a Tibetan situation? Because we do wear sleeves, and then I've been really corrected by geshe-mas when I had mine on, and I'm not so clear, actually.
Yeah. When we are in a Tibetan situation, if you're in your room, you can wear sleeves. if you're at a teaching or you visit one of your Tibetan teachers, no sleeves. Yeah, and in general, walking around the monasteries in India, it's pretty hot, so no sleeves. Yeah. Oh, when I first went to Dharamsala, even in winter, nobody wore sleeves. Yeah. But then I've noticed over the year, in the winter, the Tibetan monks will start to wear winter jackets. It only makes sense because what they wore in Old Tibet was these humongous capes, and I don't know how much they weigh, but a lot. And so to walk around, a town wearing one of those, it's not very practical. So most of the, our Geshe wears long sleeves, yeah, but most of the senior generation probably doesn't. But it's so hot there that it's not a big deal.
I think the two things that were unclear is it was at Sakyadhita that I was corrected about wearing sleeves by my Geshe-ma roommate.
Ah,
Who
was your Geshe-ma?
Dawa Chuzum.
Ah, okay, yeah.
And also then at Deer Park, the way they hold it is sometimes tight and sometimes not.
Yeah, but like I said, informal occasions, like at a conference, yeah. Although, sometimes there can be some, give and take too. If it's really cold, it's okay to wear sleeves. But especially around the Tibetans, and especially around the Galupas, the Kargyus and Nyingmas wear sleeves much more often. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Following up on the dress etiquette, I'm curious about when we go to town here, is wearing sleeves
I think
necessary?
when we go to town, it's okay. Yeah, because, in Newport, nobody knows what a Buddhist monastic is. So just even, sometimes it happens, you wear your robes, but your arm is bare, and this one, because you're wearing your Zen, that's okay. But if you want to wear sleeves when you're in town, that's okay too.
What about if I don't want to wear sleeves because it's hot?
And just both sleeves uncovered in town. It's probably okay, as long as, especially with the donka, you have something here, yeah. Yeah, it's just we shouldn't have low necklines and high things here, and yeah. Yeah, anything else? Yeah.
So going to physical therapy, I always wore my robes and changed there.
Yeah.
But I've seen members of the community go in their pants and go to the medical facility directly. So it's much better to wear the robes going into the place with your robes on,
right.
rather than
and in RPTs they have little change rooms right beside the room, so it's very easy to change when you're there. Or you wear if it's winter, you wear your pants under your shemdap and then just take your shemdap off. Yeah, but we should wear our robes everywhere we go, except if you're crossing the border into China. Then probably better not to. Yeah. Anything else? Okay. No high heels. Yeah?
Has come up before where I think you said that Lama Yeshe at one time was considering changing the monastic robes, and you asked us here whether we'd be interested in changing robes. Is that,
Yeah, he did. He was suggesting that we make something more practical for the West. He was really a renegade in that way. even regarding the Tibetan robes, usually the donka with gold here, like Geshe-la is wearing, that's only for monks in the Tantric college or for Geshis or Rinpoches, so it's people with some status. He had the Injis wearing those kind of donkas. The Tibetans were going, because we were never trained, our behavior was, but we were wearing that kind of donka. So he was quite, But he said, and he wanted people to make up some styles of robes that could be used. And I remember there was one monk named Thubten Pende, and he came out one day wearing, this was just around Tushita, he didn't leave Tushita, but it was a dark blue, full-length kind of robe. I mean, because the Catholics have long robes like that, it fits in with the society. So there were a couple of tries for that, but that never really took off and flew. Yeah. But I tell you, the Chinese are smart, they have a clip. The Vietnamese are even smarter because clips break. They just have a bow that you tie. But what's interesting, in Taiwan, the different monasteries have different style of robes too. And if you can tell who's from what monastery according to the style of the robes, if you know the different styles. In the same way that within the Tibetans, there's different style of robes, and you can tell what tradition they belong to according to what they're wearing. Of course, we didn't know any of that when we started out, so we just wore whatever, it was kind of golden color, and we just wore it, nobody cared. The lamas didn't say anything, but we had to wear our robes. So I think it's important to wear our robes everywhere. It is not a hindrance. You hear some people who disrobe, and one of the reasons they give is, well, the people can't relate to you when you're wearing robes. That is not true. I mean, I find what happens more is people come up and talk to you. And they kind of, who are you? What do you do? And, oh, I'm Tibetan Buddhist monastic. Oh, do you know the Dalai Lama? What do you think about rebirth? Does it exist? And I've told you about the guy on the plane who knelt down in the aisle and confessed to me. And, there's, and you get all sorts of other things like, you're in the women's bathroom and somebody comes in and goes, and this was before the whole trans thing. Now, I'm afraid one of us will be in the women's bathroom and somebody will come drag us off because we're breaking, the law of Florida. I don't know. But, but you meet a lot of people that way, and people by and large they're curious or whatever. If they stare, you just smile back. It's not a big deal. Okay, let's dedicate, and we'll try and get to the next phrase in that sentence next time.